Do you play soccer? Well, if you do, or if your kids do, this is definitely going to be a video worth watching right the way through to the end, as I'm going to be going from 10 to 1, the most common soccer injuries, and some helpful tips to avoid them or to work the way through the rehabilitation process. So my name's Lachlan Sutherland. I'm a big fan of soccer, and I'm a big fan of helping adults or kids return to the soccer pitch and go right the way through their rehabilitation process, right the way through to 100%. So there are a number of different risk factors when it comes to injury in soccer, and there's a number of different things that we can do to avoid or lessen the chance of injury. But the two biggest risk factors are previous injury and inadequate rehab. Now, as much as we'd like to be able to go back and uninjure people, that's not a possibility. The one thing that you can control is the rehabilitation process. So if there's going to be one thing that you're going to take out of today, the biggest thing to consider is that you need to go through your rehabilitation process right the way through to 100%. It can't just be when you're pain-free. It has to be at the point where you've got full strength, full muscular endurance, and full cardio endurance as well. Just because you're pain-free doesn't mean you're at full function. So with that in mind, let's go through from 10 to 1 the most common soccer injuries. So at number 10 is plantar fasciitis. So the plantar fascia is a strong fibrous tissue that sits right at the bottom of the foot and helps the calf with push off of the foot and taking from one step to the next, particularly whilst running. So this is something that usually gets aggravated at the start of the season or during pre-season. In some cases it can be improper footwear, or in some cases it can be not doing enough running during the off season. So it's important to maintain a certain level of fitness through the off season, but it's also important to make sure that you're wearing nice supportive footwear during those initial training sessions and right the way through. At number 9, we've got an Achilles tendinopathy. So the Achilles, as we all know, as most people know, it's the attachment of the calf muscle onto the heel and has a big part in transferring the force from the calf into the foot to allow that push off. So we usually see irritation of the plantar fascia either at a midpoint or at the attachment of the Achilles onto the heel. And much like plantar fasciitis, it's usually an injury that occurs during pre-season or early season where there hasn't been that proper running and load being put through that Achilles through the off season and through to the early part of the season. So it is important to maintain a certain level of loading and certain level of running during the off season, and to not go too fast too quickly when you get into the pre-season training and those early season training sessions. In at number 8 is shin splints. So shin splints is the aggravation of the muscles and the bone itself that's running up the inner part of the shin. Again, like the last two, usually occurs during pre-season or the early part of the season where there's been an increase in load that the body hasn't coped with, and it's led to this level of pain. So again, quite important to keep up a certain level of loading during the off season, but again, is quite important to make sure that you've got the right footwear during those fitness sessions in the pre-season and those early training sessions, as well as making sure you've got appropriate footwear through the whole way through the season, particularly in the pre-season, the early part of the season. So at number 7, we've got the anterior cruciate ligament, or the ACL. Now this is the big scary one. This is the one that you see on the news with the long rehabilitation processes. So the ACL is one of 2 ligaments that cross over at the knee and provide stability for the knee. The ACL also has one of the longest recovery periods of any injury, where it's usually 10 to 12 months. Now, it usually occurs with contact injuries or contact during a game, during a tackle, or landing awkwardly. Now, these types of things unfortunately can't be avoided, but there is certain warm-ups like the FIFA 11 Plus, which has been shown to reduce injury incidences and has been shown to reduce ACL tears. So at number 6, we've got the collateral ligaments of the knee. So we have one on either side of the knee. We've got the medial collateral ligament running along the inside and the lateral collateral ligament running along the outside. So these again are ligaments that provide stability to the knee, and again are usually involved. They are usually sprained in contact, either during tackles or coming down awkwardly. In at number 5, we have a quadriceps strain or tear. So this is the least commonly affected muscle group of the thigh. The function of the quadriceps is to help straighten the knee and also help the hip flexors drive the thigh through in running. So that's how it gets the name, the driver muscle. So they are most commonly affected either during sprinting. As I was talking about before, they help drive that thigh through when you're sprinting, but also when kicking for power. So when a soccer player will kick for power, they'll kick with a pointed toe rather than the instep of the toe, which biases the muscles of the leg, working more of the quadriceps rather than the groin muscles that you'll see, and we'll talk about a little bit later for shorter passes. So in at number 4, we've got a calf muscle strain or tear. So as I mentioned a little bit before, when we were talking about the Achilles, the most important function of the calf is to provide push off and power when we're starting to work into a sprint, into running or into sprinting. Because soccer players are constantly moving, they are constantly working their calf muscles, and you'll usually find calf muscle strains or tears occur either when there's a player is quickly setting off into a sprint or is quickly trying to change direction and pushing off through their foot and using that calf maximally. So in at number 3, we've got the common ankle sprain. So this most often occurs when a player's foot rolls outwards and they land on the outside of their foot. So it usually affects the ATFL or the anterior talofibular ligament, or the CFL, the calcaneofibular ligament, which are the 2 ligaments along the outside of the ankle that provide stability to the ankle. So because soccer involves constant changes of direction, there is a heightened risk of rolling your ankle with those changes of direction. And some of the other things that can cause issues with rolling ankles is if there's divots in the ground and the player will land partly on the edge of the divot and roll their foot inwards, or otherwise what can happen is that if 2 players make contact either with each other's feet or with the ball, it can push the foot outwards rather than rolling over. So in at number 2, we've got a groin strain or tear. So the groin, or the adductor muscles as they are known, help bring the leg across the body. They assist the hamstrings and the gluteals and the quadricep muscles in running, and they are constantly put under strain with the changes of direction of the body, which puts them under increased load. And as I was mentioning before with the quadriceps, they are used more consistently with a pass over a shorter distance because the player is opening their foot up, which is putting more strain on those groin or adductor muscles and asking more of those muscles. So in at number 1, we've got the hamstring strain or tear. So the hamstrings are very important in running, particularly because they help slow the leg down as it's being extended out and help pull that leg back, getting ready for the next stride. So in soccer, the hamstrings are put under a lot of strain as there's a lot of sprinting involved with soccer, so the players are constantly setting off to sprint, so we're constantly requiring the hamstrings, and are also required to help decelerate the leg after those quite strong kicks. If a goalkeeper is kicking a goal kick, or a striker is looking to strike the ball as strong as he can to kick for a goal. Hamstring injuries are usually quite common with players when they're looking to set off and accelerate for a sprint, or if they're knocked whilst they're sprinting. So there we have it. Those are the top 10 most common soccer injuries from 10 to 1. Now, if you've experienced any of these in recent memory, or you've got one of those niggling injuries that you can't seem to get over, feel free to contact us and we can answer any questions and help you throughout your rehabilitation process. Thank you.